Martha Beck, and I want to talk to you for a few minutes about what's happening in our society right now and what I think may be happening in the near future. And I feel like I have some perspective on this because I've been studying society my entire adult life. I have 3 degrees from Harvard, all in social sciences, and I've always been fascinated by something that I have felt would happen during my lifetime. You may think this is woo-woo or crazy, but I think a lot of people share this. A sense that I would live through and potentially help with a shift in the way human beings think, a positive shift in the way we think, in the way we interact with each other, and in the way we treat our planet. So I've been watching from kind of the woo-woo angle, this sense of truth angle, and also from a very sort of left hemisphere, look at the records and learn the things angle. So I made this video several years ago, and I'm going to do it again because I think it's more apropos than ever now. Our whole social model is basically a rigid pyramid, and it's based on a combination of wealth and power. It started in medieval Europe, or even before that. I mean, it goes back to prehistory, where powerful people and people who owned the most resources held most of the structures of society and imposed them on people who were less powerful. So, for example, in medieval Europe, you had the kings and the aristocracy up here, and then the lower aristocracy, and you get all the way down to the bottom, where the feudal lord would sometimes be seen as protecting a group of peasants, sometimes seen as owning a group of peasants. This is in Europe. And the peasants would work the land and create actual value, and then they would pass the vast majority of that up the pyramid in exchange for military protection and for not being stabbed to death. That's basically what they were about. So when the USA was born, the founders of the U.S. Government, framers of the Constitution, said this is all wrong. We hate this. We do not like this, and it's not fair. And we believe that all men are created equal, and we're going to create a country based on that premise. So they did. And then men who had less property than they did said, oh, you mean we're equal to you? And they said, oh, not you. And then a few women dared to say, oh, do we count? Oh, hell no. Don't even think about it. People who were not white were like, do we count? No, we will enslave and massacre you without a second thought. We're created equal. And some of us are more equal than others, to quote George Orwell. So I've been looking at this sort of basic hypocrisy in the structures of our economy and politics and law my entire adult life. And I don't like the pyramid either. But my undergraduate degree is in Asian languages and civilizations. And early in my life, I ended up spending time in Asia and learning stuff about Asian philosophy. And in that part of the world, much more than in the European-dominated world, there was a concept called awakening or enlightenment. And it's not a social concept at all. It's something that happens to individuals. And it's where the structures of ego that keep us bound and serving things we don't really believe in, things like the simple belief, I'm not good enough, I don't deserve to be alive. I mean, there are all these beliefs that we hold in our ego structure that interfere with our happiness. So in Asian philosophy, there's a long tradition of accessing something else within the psyche, something that is not rigid, something that is not judgmental and comparative, something that is beyond suffering and in a state of continuous peace, even when life gets rocky and things go up and down. Well, I was fascinated with this for 2 reasons. First one is I was suffering and I wanted to stop. So awakening sounded like a good thing. So I really, really pursued it, but with my own meditation, with reading all the great philosophers I could. And I found that if you look at the whole history of the planet, in all historical periods and all over the world, individuals who knew nothing about Zen or Taoism or anything like that were experiencing or reporting the same thing that was called awakening in Asia. I definitely think that Dante had an awakening, and then he wrote the Divine Comedy, wrote a whole book based on that. I think Shakespeare did. I think Walt Whitman did. Teresa of Avila. I mean, we see fewer women than men because women weren't entered into the record. But I think, in fact, far more people have been experiencing this throughout history than we know about. So I think a lot of them woke up out of suffering and did good in the world around them, and then died and were gone. Some of them became the cornerstones of major world religions. Anyway, I started to think, what if a lot of people woke up? What if this awakening is the shift in human consciousness and connection to the planet that I've been anticipating at some level of my consciousness since childhood? I started to think, as a sociologist, what would a different structure look like? Because there have been revolutions and revolutions and revolutions, and what always happens is that the people at the bottom of the pyramid or near the top get angry at the people above them, attack, big ideals for equality. It always ends up in the same pyramid with, the wealthy and powerful here, people down here creating wealth, dying by their thousands or millions. If you look at Russia and China after their revolutions, it just recreated the same pyramid-shaped, unfair, violent, rigid structure again and again and again. But that comes from a human ego that is rigid and judgmental and inflexible and greedy. What if a lot of people woke up? Like a critical mass of the population. It wouldn't even have to be that big a mass. What would happen if a bunch of awakened people formed a society? And I thought about it for a long time, and I thought it would be like a pool of water. So water always creates a completely level surface. There are waves in it, and they interact with each other. And I thought, what if you had all people genuinely treating one another as equal? There would only be the wave action of individual people influencing the ripples on the top of that level surface. And I felt, and this is just me making stuff up, but I feel it very deeply, that the thing that establishes the force or the amount of influence a person has is their degree of presence, their degree of compassion, their degree of kindness. So I thought, it's like water. Being awake is like going from a structure to water, to a liquid, something completely flexible. That's what Taoism is all about, is the stream of energy that is taking us all to the place beyond suffering. But I thought, how do you turn a pyramid into a pool? Like, how does that even happen? Revolution never worked. And then one day I thought, wait, and this I think more today than I have ever thought before. The pyramid is already in a pool. It is surrounded by a pool. There is a pool of awakened people that is growing, but the people who are most likely to awaken in a pyramid-shaped society are the people at the bottom. So I put together a sugar cube pyramid, and I got myself some water, so this represents the old consciousness, this represents the new consciousness, and I thought, it's already happening. Oops, I spilled. This is already happening. The pyramid is already surrounded by the pool. Now, aside from my spilling, I want you to notice what happens as the water interacts with the structure. You know the saying, water flowing day by day wears the hardest stone away? Well, what's happening here is that the water is slowly dissolving the sugar. So I don't believe that we need a revolution. I believe we need a dissolution. We need to dissolve the structures of the white supremacist patriarchy in our own minds and lives, and then watch as the awakened consciousness includes the patriarchy to death. Now, I want you to notice something. Nothing's left out. No one is left out of this experience. As the water rises and as the sugar dissolves, everything is still present. Everyone who was on that pyramid is still there. There is nothing to fear. But the more present it becomes, the more presence there is, the more our rigid structures, which cause suffering and strife and war and famine, surrender to the forces of love, of inclusion, of compassion, of sweetness. This is becoming very sweet. And as it continues to dissolve the sugar cubes, the water is going to rise and rise and bring everyone into a stillness that is called awakening. And then we'll see what kind of world we can make of that. Have courage, friends. All is well.